Hello all, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a model showcase video for this 1/16 scale, fully radio controlled Tiger I. Unlike my usual 1/16 scale or smaller scale videos in which those models are built for commission, this model here is built for my private collection, and we'll be going over more about that in detail in this video. If anyone is interested in having their model painted and built to these specifications, you can contact me from the EastCoastArmory.com website with the email address info@EastCoastArmory.com. There I'll be able to answer any questions for what type of services I can offer, as well as pricing and availability information. Let's start with a quick walk around the model. The model started off as a 1/16 scale pre-assembled radio-controlled model from Heng Long. The model was purchased a few years ago and stayed in the stock configuration up until very recently. The model was a simple project and was pretty much just a detailed polish job of the original Heng Long. The model features the stock running gear as well as the stock transmission system and gearbox system, as well as the electronics. What was modified on the model was a lot of the exterior detail components. We'll be going over these modifications in this video. To start with, the most noticeable and most important modification that was made to this model concerns the model's gun mantlet. As a lot of people know, these Heng Long 1/16 scale Tiger I's for some reason have the mantlet mounted upside down. The visor is inverted, and the whole mantle itself is just incorrectly mounted. To remount the mantlet in the proper configuration, the tank was unassembled and the mantlet was removed from the rotor drum, and modifications had to have been made to the rotor drum in order to fit the mantlet properly. Also, the mantlet originally had a small hole molded into this small portion here of the mantlet. This small hole was for a red LED and had to do with the model's airsoft BB gun that is mounted on the inside. The light bulb the LED was removed, and the hole was plugged over with the bodywork and sanded flush. With that simple modification, the model's appearance was already greatly improved. Moving our way from the mantlet, modification was also made to the model's gun barrel. As what a lot of people know concerning these Heng Long models is that the barrel is shorter than it should be on a model Tiger I of this scale. The area that the Heng Long model is shorter is in this location here of the barrel, near the recoil tube. The Heng Long model has its barrel represented in the recoiled state and is shorter. This was most likely done by Heng Long so that they could fit the model in a shorter box, which will save on costs. To modify the gun barrel, I had to first cut the barrel off of the barrel shroud here, which is connected to the mantlet. On the Heng Long model, this is all molded as one piece. So I carefully cut the barrel from the shroud, and then I carefully removed the molded-in barrel recoil tube up to the retaining nut here. The retaining nut and forward of the barrel was kept, and the recoil tube itself was discarded, and a new recoil tube was fabricated out of turned resin. The recoil tube itself was then mounted to the barrel as well as to the barrel shroud, and the model still retains its airsoft firing feature. Another area that was reworked on the model were the model's Pioneer tools. The original Heng Long model has these tools molded into the upper deck molding. The tools that were molded in were deleted, and the burrs were removed via bodywork. The new tools that you see here are an aftermarket replacement set, which are casted in a white metal, and were purchased from a vendor who's located in Hong Kong on eBay. The set came with the pick, with the wire cutter, the axe, the shovel, the sledgehammer. The set also came with a replacement fire extinguisher, which is important because this piece was missing on the Heng Long model. In addition to the fire extinguisher, the kit also came with the crowbar that we see here mounted adjacent to the tow cables. The set also came with another shovel, however, it was not needed for this model. As for the model's large shovel that we have here mounted on the front, this is actually the Heng Long original. The original model supplied shovel was adequately detailed, and I didn't see any need to replace it. It was simply popped off of the front plate here, repainted and remounted. Unlike the other tools, this shovel here was not part of the molding and was a separate casting, which made it a lot easier to rework. This also applied to not only to the shovel, but also to the tow cables. The model's tow cable and gun cleaning rod cluster that we have here were removed, repainted, and then remounted. Along with the two main tow cables, this also applies to the model's track removal cable, which we have here stowed on the side of the model. Another addition that was made to the model that I strongly recommend to improve the look of these Heng Longs is the replacement of the model's original Bosch Light. The model originally has a Bosch Light like this, which has the basic detail of the Bosch Light, however has this big LED emerging out of the center of it. This is common on Heng Long models and really hurts the look of the vehicle. Fortunately, replacements are very easily found, and listed below I have the link of the supplier where I got a lot of the replacement parts from, the Bosch Lights being one of them. The Bosch Lights themselves are casted in white metal and are pre-wired and pre-configured with an LED. To install them, you simply pluck out the original Bosch Light, insert the new metal casting, and then just wire everything to the Heng Long circuits. Once everything is done, the lights will function as the same way that the original kit supply or the model supplied light did when the model was first unwrapped. In addition to the Bosch lights, another very easy modification that was made to the model is over here on the lower hull. On the bottom of these Tiger I's, there's a little reinforcement plate which is intended to reinforce the hull plate here for mounting of the tank's final drives. Because on the real Tiger I, the final drives are under so much stress, it had a reinforcement plate which was welded to the armor plate, and the bolts ran through into the final drive, just thus reinforcing and making it stronger. These small little plates are missing on the Heng Long model, and however are easily obtained as an aftermarket piece, and this aftermarket piece along with the Bosch lights is made in white metal. The set came with one for each side and were a simple addition. No sanding, cutting, grinding was required at all. You just take the piece and simply mount it to the model. In addition to the headlights being replaced, the headlight power cables were also fitted. These are missing on the stock Heng Long model and are a simple addition to make just out of some wire. The wire just gets bent and then glued to the upper hull. Obviously these are just for detail purposes only, as the real wires enter into the vehicle from the center base of the headlamp. In addition to that, another modification was made to the bow machine gun. It has its tarpaulin mounts fitted, which are missing on the original model. And also, if we could notice, there is no MG34 fitted to this vehicle. The stock Heng Long machine gun resembles that of an M1919, not an MG34. So rather than have the incorrect M1919 present, I simply just didn't install the machine gun, as these machine guns were removable on the real vehicle. If I come across a aftermarket bow machine gun that is properly detailed, I'll simply add that piece later on down the road. Another component that was fabricated because was missing on the Heng Long model was the front air intake cover cap. The front air intake blower has its mounting nub molded into the upper deck, but is missing the cap itself. For the cap, I machined one out of resin and on the lathe, and then once completed, just simply affixed it to the hull. Another modification that was made to help improve the look of the model was the removal of the model's antenna. For those of you who work with Heng Longs, you will know that the antenna base is mounted incorrectly on the stock Heng Long vehicle, and instead of mounted in its proper location, it's mounted right here on the rear engine deck, slightly parallel to the model's snorkel cover cap. The antenna would be originally mounted in this location here. For the removal procedure, the antenna base, which is a little brass machine mount, was unbolted from the model. The original hole was plugged up and sealed with bodywork. And then the base was simply relocated to its proper location over here, right in front of the grillwork. The base is in the proper location, and it has perfect clearance with the turret bustle bin as it would on the real vehicle. The base itself was simply just reinserted into this location. However, a small modification was made so that the antenna fits into it. The original Heng Long has its brass securing base, and the antenna, it has a spring that's built into the antenna wire that slips over the brass. This is not accurate for a German vehicle, so on this model I turned the brass base on the lathe, drilling a small hole that entered into the brass machining, or the brass turning, which is what it is. The wire was then inserted into the new hole that was drilled and was soldered shut. The wire and the antenna base are one solid piece. After that, it got simply mounted to the model's radio antenna that was originally on the model, and that completed the procedure. Now you have the better look of having the antenna in the appropriate location, and it also functions as the model's radio antenna. Some of the other things to look out for when working on a Heng Long is that a lot of the small deck fittings that are molded into the model appear to be either mounted upside down or are duplicates and are a mirror image on the reverse side. For what purpose this is done escapes me. However, this is true for items such as the antenna storage tube. Tiger I's have their antenna storage tube mounted right over here on this portion of the model on the rear hull, and the way it would work is when the antenna is not in use, you would remove it from the antenna base and store it in the tube. The Heng Long model has the tube mounted on this location here, which is appropriate. However, they also mounted it on this side of the model's hull. The molded-in tube was removed carefully without harming any of the other molded-in detail, and once removed, improved the look of the vehicle. In addition to the antenna tube, this molded-in mirror image was also prevalent on the rear taillight here. As we can see, the blue taillight is the tubular type that is found on Tiger I's, and Heng Long molded this piece into this section here, which is accurate. However, they also molded into this portion here of the hull, which is not accurate. A simple router bit on a Dremel removes the molded-in pieces. With the pieces removed, the model's look and accuracy improves as well. Some of the other parts that were mounted upside down, along with the gun mantle, which we discussed earlier, was the model's pistol port. The Heng Long model has the pistol port, again, mounted inversed. To fix this, the pistol port, fortunately, is an easy part to pop off. You simply just pop it off and mount it on properly. The copula is also mounted incorrectly on the stock Heng Long model. The hatch, luckily the whole copula is removable in that you could pop it off because of the weak glues that they use. And to mount it on properly, you will need to remove a small mounting nub that's molded into the copula casting. With a small nub removed, you could then align the copula in the proper location like we have here. Another part that was also mounted on backwards, or upside down, was the model's toolbox. For some reason, the toolbox on this model was bolted to the rear deck or to the rear hull upside down. Luckily, no glues are used in the mounting of these parts, so to remove it and to mount it properly, you simply unbolt it from the inside, rotate it, and rebolt it to the model, thus fixing the issue. Some other details that were made to the model was the removal of the seam that separates the turret top from the turret base plate. If you look at a stock Heng Long, there's a seam that runs along the whole bottom of the vehicle, of the turret. The seam was removed via bodywork and was sanded to a flush finish. In addition to removal of the seam, the small weld bead here was re-added because the tank actually had the weld bead molded in. Unfortunately, because of the bodywork, the weld bead was deleted, was removed, so it had to be reinstalled. Some other modifications to the model include the turret lift bosses that we have here on either side of the turret. The lift bosses are originally molded in, however, the bases emerged too much from the turret side, and the bolt itself is just a plastic molded in nub. The nub was removed and replaced with a machined boss here, which is more accurate. The plate itself had its height adjusted to the proper dimensions and has its two holes mounted in the proper locations. In addition to having this piece get modified, the visor was also modified, having its vision slit machined into it. Another modification that was also made to the turret was on the smoke trajectors. The smoke trajectors have their firing cables fitted to the backs of their canisters, and then they enter into the turret via a conduit, just like it would on the real vehicle. This is present on both sides of the turret. Another tip for modeling the Tiger I is that the Tiger I, on both the Tamiya 116 as well as on the Heng Long version, have their Zerk fittings and wells molded into the wheel castings. This is as per the real vehicle, and on the real vehicle, the way these pieces are painted is that the well itself, from what I've seen on the Boggington Tiger, is painted red, and the grease fitting or the Zerk fitting itself is brass is a brass fitting and is exposed with its brass color. It's a simple addition to make to the model, and once done to all the wheels, really improves and helps the look of the vehicle, giving it a little focal point. In addition to the Zerk fittings being painted on the road wheels, on the model sprocket, there's another Zerk fitting that is molded into the casting, which a little drop of red paint will really make it stand out. As for the model's paint pattern, the model is painted after the real vehicle, which was named Tiki. The model itself belonged to the Das Reich division, and it was painted like this in May of 1943. What's unique about the paint pattern is that it's a splinter type paint scheme. However, the top of the vehicle is left in its base coat, and the pattern does not continue up to the top extremities of the hull. Also, what's unique is that the Tiki is one of the only Tigers that I know of that has an elaborate logo that's painted on it. Typically, fancy logos like that you more or less see on American vehicles, and not so much German tanks. All of the markings that you see on the model, the logo, the pattern, as well as the 812 numbers, those were all painted by hand. The crosses, the ghosted crosses that you see on the side, that was a spare decal that I had floating around in my decal bin. The numbers were hand applied and hand painted as they would have been on the real vehicle, and so as just as well as the Tiki logo itself. The logo is mounted on three sides of the vehicle. And both sides you have it mounted on the front. On the front of the vehicle, it's mounted next to the driver vision slit. And on the reverse side would be mounted right here, mirror image as as it is on the reverse side. The 812 is also a mirror image. It's on both sides of the turret and is also seen on the rear bustle bin. The 812 is unique in that It's not a typical font face that's used on German tanks, which is why a spare decal number of 812 wasn't used, and I had to resort to applying the numbers by hand. As I mentioned earlier, the model is fully radio controlled, and let's go and take it out for some of its paces. Like I mentioned earlier, the model is all stock electronics as well as the running gear. The road wheels that you see are not aftermarket whatsoever and are the inaccurate kit ones. However, for the purposes of this build, the stock suspension and wheels will work just fine. To turn on the model, it's very simple for those who never worked on a Heng Long before. The radio just has a little simple on and off switch. These little knobs and control levers that you see here are just for looks and are non-functional. Basically, this stick here drives the model. This stick here does the functions. Left and right turns the turret. Bringing the stick down will both elevate and depress the gun. The gun works on a rotation type system, and as long as you hold it down, it'll first dip down and then go back up, and vice versa. Going up on this radio here will fire the airsoft BB that the tank is armed with. For firing the gun, those controls are controlled by these two hatches here. The loader's hatch controls a switch that is a main cutoff switch for the airsoft gun, and the commander's copula is actually the hopper in which you would put the airsoft BBs on the inside. Now the tank has already been loaded, so it should be able to fire. To turn on the tank, there is a simple on and off switch on the bottom of the model, in which I've painted a little red marker to know when the model is on. The other switch adjacent to it is a channel control switch, and you could control between 3 different modes. This is in case you're going to be running with a bunch of other models. The main battery is hidden underneath that panel there, and unlike most model tanks that have a screw retention plate, on the Tiger I, it's on with a snap in which you pull that back tab over there, and the bottom plate would drop off. I'll now turn on the model and put it through its paces. And the model is now ready for operation. The model also has a simple type of speed controller, which is non-proportional. It's either on or off, so you only have really one speed. No matter how much you try to give a throttle, the model will only go in with one steady speed until obviously when the battery starts getting low. The model can do static turns like this, in which one track stops and the other keeps spinning, or the model can do neutral turns, which is accurate for the Tiger I, in that the Tiger I did have a neutral steer capability. Also, as we notice, when the tank moves forward, the 2 LED headlights activate. The gun rotates left and right, and goes up and down. For it, like I mentioned earlier, it's only one direction, and the gun's elevation is on a tracked circuit. To test out the gun, I set up a basic target, and let's see if I'm able to hit it. I will now maneuver the tank into firing position. And it looks like I nailed it right on the bullseye. And that concludes this model showcase video for this 1/16 scale German Tiger I. If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook. Also, don't forget to check out eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 scale tank builds as well as 1/6 scale detail components. Thank you.